Lowe's is our new go-to destination where we can explore the latest Craftsman products, including their new V20 Power Tool battery platform. The Craftsman's V20 cordless power tool setup features a high-capacity lithium battery that's part of Craftsman's interchangeable battery system, and it works with all the tools in their V20 lineup. That means you got the power you need, the power you deserve. For the latest Craftsman products, visit Lowes.com/footballers. Lowe's is the new home of Craftsman.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast, coming to you from PristineAuction.com studios with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Welcome in once again.
Singing the standards.
What's going on,
Is that Andy Holloway? Is that Michael Bublé?
Welcome in. It is Thursday, January 24th.
Gonna be 43-year-old women barging through the door.
That Bublé's got those on lockdown?
I'm pretty sure he knows his demo.
Oh, my goodness.
But to be fair, I love him.
He's a fabulous singer.
He's great.
Got to give respect.
I'm
fellow singers.
Big fan of the Christmas album.
Big fan. Welcome in to another episode of the show, The Fantasy Footballers. We have the second half of the Running Back Truth episode, going from running backs 11 through however many we can, and it's going to be a great show. We are fresh off another morning of competitive pickleball.
Oh, yes.
And there's a small story from this morning that I don't know if Mike is even aware of. I wasn't aware of it until after we left the gym.
Does this story involve me?
It doesn't. Now
Phew.
So here's
because those are the worst kind of stories.
The ones you don't know
Pretty
about.
sure this one involves me.
Oh, excellent.
So, if you don't know, the standardized demographic for the pickleball crowd is more
Bublé area.
It's from Bublé and beyond.
I think Frank Sinatra.
The Venn diagram.
Not quite Bublé. It's much more Frank Sinatra.
It's more wherever Bolton is right now. It's an older demographic. During this prolonged bye, since we're not recording every morning, we get out and we play some competitive pickleball. I'm talking paddles flying around, sweat.
Oh, it gets sweaty.
So, this morning we had we had a guest. All right, Damien was there, and we were teaching him how to play, and he ends up paired up with Jason on this court that's kind of designated for beginners. And we've determined that what makes you a beginner in pickleball is generally the people playing there seem to be wearing blue jeans during the So Jason and Damien are playing a game of pickleball, and I guess Jason dove for a ball. He may or may not have hit the ground pretty hard on this dive.
Oh no.
Yeah, I took a tumble with effort.
And the elderly opponent wearing blue jeans,
very old man in blue jeans across the way,
called him a sack of potatoes.
Oh, you went down like a sack of potatoes. And let me tell you something, Mr. Blue Jeans.
Now, what kind of retribution did you get on the court?
It was 1-to-1 when I went down
like a sack of potatoes.
Like a big fat sack of potatoes. And it was very quickly 9-to-1.
Because you took issue.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay, we're playing like these rules, huh?
But you said you didn't even believe that he had called you a sack of potatoes until someone else confirmed that you heard what you heard.
I wasn't 100% sure. I was like, did he call me a sack of potatoes?
What could he,
and then I
what
look
else
over,
would he have
and
said?
Damon is laughing because, sure enough, he called me. Now, in fairness, I'm kind of like a sack of potatoes. And I did just draft a sack of potatoes in the food fight to the death.
Oh, was he a spitballer's fan?
He's probably a spitwad.
Oh my gosh! So it just entertained me because after I'm driving Damon back to the studio, he tells me that his favorite moment of the whole morning of learning about pickleball was Jason being called out by some 70-year-old guy in blue jeans as a sack of potatoes. So that's going to go in the annals of your pickleball lore. All right, quick question of the day from Willie Z in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and this goes to all of us, including you.
Sack of potatoes.
Sack of potatoes. When starting a Dynasty Fantasy Football League, when is the best time to have a startup draft? A lot of Dynasty questions right now, and, You guys have heard us talk about Sleeper, a great platform to put your Dynasty League. But what is the best time to have a Dynasty draft?
It's so tough because one of the things that's great about starting a new Dynasty League is that you get to do it in the offseason. So it's like you really want to do it now. You want to do it yesterday. You want to do it this week, like just immediately. That's the reason you're playing in a Dynasty League. But it's tough because you don't know all the pertinent information, and a startup Dynasty draft is exceptionally important. Everyone in that league is going to have, the people they draft on that day as the foundation of their team for at least the next 5 years. So if you make a bad pick just because you didn't know a free agent was going to sign or they were going to draft a high rookie, it's really hard to do this time of year. I know we would probably recommend, and look, the Ultimate Draft Kit, we're working on it already for 2019. That'll pre-orders up on the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
Super Bowl Sunday, we release Dynasty rankings and rookie rankings before the UDK release because you need it in the offseason. But even that doesn't come out until after the NFL draft is done. So it really does you a disservice, I feel like, if you do it.
So would you target like a May 1st? Somewhere after the NFL draft?
Just anywhere after the NFL draft is fine with me.
Give people the best chance to have a roster as early as possible, be able to do trades, be able to enjoy what makes Dynasty great, but not so early that you're at a disadvantage, free agency hasn't happened, etc.
I think if you're targeting that time of year, I would do it on May 2nd as a celebration of the birth of me.
Potato Man?
Potato Man. Yeah. The birthday draft. Nothing. I thought I'd get lambasted from you two for shouting out my own birthday, but
it's good.
I got crickets.
Vocabulary.
I didn't even get crickets.
I mean, you just gave away like all your top secret password questions.
Yes, everything
Here's
is
the thing.
May 2nd.
Here's the thing about your birthday. Nobody ever wonders when it is around here.
Right.
There's about a 30-day lead-in and a 30-day lead-out around Jason's special day.
It's a pretty big day.
All right,
Getting
let's dig in here. We're going to jump right into the running back truth part 2. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at the FF Ballers. Check us out on Instagram. That's Instagram.com/fantasyfootballers if you want to follow us over there. And we always appreciate your reviews, your subscriptions on Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening. If maybe it's on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, wherever it is, we appreciate your listenership very, very much. We're here for you. We want you to win. That's what this podcast is all about. We also want you to enjoy yourself. So that's why we're here. YouTube.com/thefantasyfootballers as well. And like I said, we're pre-recording this show a few days early, so we're going to tackle all the big news, all the details of what's gone on in a news segment next week.
Probably the news segment to end all news segments.
At least for that day it will be, yes. But let's dive right back into the running backs.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
All right. On Tuesday, we talked about the top 10 running backs, broke down the truth. How many great games did they have in which they scored 22 or more points? How many good games did they have? 10 or more points in that RB2, RB1 discussion. How many bust games did they have where they were outside the top 50 at the position and really, really hurt your fantasy team? No stability when you're performing to that level. When you give up, a couple weeks where you bust and you've been counted on, nobody wants that from the running back position. So we're going to continue down the road right here, right now. And remember, missed games do not count against the consistency score of the player. So we're not holding injured, missing games. We're saying when you knew they were active, when you played them, what did they give you? Let's see if there's some truth to where they finished at the end of the fantasy season, or is it deceptive based on their consistency? So we are going to tackle number 11 because that's where he was. Kareem Hunt was the number 11 overall running back in fantasy football. He didn't play another game from week 12 on because of the domestic
off-field incident
situation. The off-field incident. And look, we talked about it a lot when it happened. And so this is going to kind of paint more of a picture of what to expect from the Chiefs' backfield moving forward. But through the first 11 weeks, when he played, he was the 7th most consistent running back in fantasy football. He only busted one time in that span. He was good for all the remaining games. So
and that was week 1.
Yeah, and that was week 1. So, against top defenses, he struggled to a greater degree, but this was a player that you counted on week in and week out, and you couldn't this offense. And we saw what Damien Williams has done.
That's more of the conversation.
Right.
Because we can't talk about the player anymore. He doesn't have a team. 2, he's going to be facing a massive suspension if he indeed actually makes it back to the NFL. But moving forward, we talked about ranking Pittsburgh Steeler RB in the terms of James Conner. I am all about drafting Kansas City running back, and in my opinion, it will be Damien Williams. I'm not going to dispute the fact that they have to add some depth. Spencer Ware is a free agent. Spencer Ware not looking anywhere close to what he used to be before his injury. And if you recall, when Kareem Hunt came into the forefront, it's because Spencer Ware suffered a catastrophic level of a knee injury. So I think that Damien Williams will get the shot to be the guy. They will draft someone. But to me, as long as that draft pick is 4th round or later, I will have zero worry. If it's a 3rd rounder, hesitation. 1st or 2nd rounder, then we're going to be in the oh crap. Do you actually draft Damien Williams with a 2nd round pick?
I mean, if they take a 1st or 2nd running back,
first or second round
running back, you're going to be drafting that guy.
See, I will not. Second round, no.
This Damien Williams hype is absurd. Look, if Damien Williams has the
here's
role,
how I feel about this, by the way.
Sure.
I feel like Mike has Damien Williams in the Dynasty League. He would love Damien Williams to be the guy.
Yes.
Jason has a prolonged life of disparaging Damien Williams, the player.
Correct.
So therefore, I feel like you are both in polar opposites with a potential bias here. I have looked at this situation, and my initial impression was complete disagreement with Mike and his assertion that Damien Williams would be the guy in that backfield. I have no skin in the game either way. I like both of you to be equally wrong. That's kind of how I live my life.
Right,
touche.
right.
And I'm just telling you my objective opinion, having seen the playoff games. Now, obviously, we are recording this before we got to see the AFC title game. What I've seen of Damien Williams, the fact that he's averaging the same yards per carry as Kareem Hunt, I believe that Damien Williams will be the foundational back for that backfield next year. That's just where I'm at right now.
Sure.
Now, if they draft a 2nd round running back, I don't feel that way anymore.
Right. I mean, this is really an unnecessary hypothetical conversation about if there is a clear running back who's got the starting job next year for Kansas City, he belongs probably in that 2nd round. I mean, he is going to be an awesome pick, despite my prolonged and absolutely true and unequivocal belief that Damien Williams is at best an average NFL running back.
You are not watching him play this year.
I literally went back. No, because I was called out on that, I went back and watched every single touch through the playoffs. I did this after watching the games live and went back and watched. He had one great cut on a touchdown run. Everything else was just, look, if you put anyone else in that system, they're going to have great success. And I think they'll be able to replace Damien Williams with a better player. But the point is this. Whoever the Kansas City running back is for Andy Reid, he is a great fantasy asset. When I besmirched Damien Williams as a player, I still was the one of the 3 of us that was the highest on him coming in, and I was saying, you've got to play him. He's a top 12 running back. It's because of the role. And that's why, the whole argument of running backs don't matter is kind of, it's real. Look, the NFL towards playoff time has been trying their best to prove that narrative because C.J. Anderson and Damien Williams, they're winning games.
It'll be very interesting to see what happens this offseason with them.
I'll see you in June.
When Mark Ingram leaves New Orleans, which he is undoubtedly going to do, maybe he lands in Kansas City and destroys Mike's soul.
If Mark Ingram landed in Kansas City, Mark Ingram would be very valuable for fantasy football.
He sure would. And look, there are players. Here's the thing. Here's an overarching point that I want to make about fantasy football because I think it's relevant. And we saw this with the way Tarik Hill, when we talked through the wide receiver truth episode, and we talked about Tarik Hill being, he was one thing at a point in his career, and then he became something else. This is a fluid, like players improve. Sometimes we look at players, we see them play, and then it's a static thing in our mind, right? It's like, this is what he is.
Right.
This is who he is. I thought Marlon Mack, Jason, was something specific in my mind last year based on what I saw. Low yard per carry. Wasn't impressed. Totally different thing that you saw it before I did. But this year, I was quick to admit, most explosive running back on that team, most consistent, best player. Players do work at getting better. Players do work at becoming better. And
I wish they would just be what they are.
so we could print the stats out.
Yeah, it'll be much easier.
But the thing is, Damien Williams, you listen to the team talk about him, and we'll see what happens. He earned what he got as an opportunity this year, and he earned the money he got. Regardless of what that means going forward, Andy Reid speaks very highly of him in practice. We'll see what that means for next year. If I'm actually in his shoes, I try to find somebody else. I don't think I can lean on just Damien Williams. That's for sure. Phillip Lindsay comes in at number 12 on our running back rankings, number 16 by consistency rank. Nobody knew this man's name before the season began outside of Denver faithful, and we brought it up a couple times on the show because of the Denver faithful touting him.
Yeah.
The attention was on Royce Freeman, and here comes Phillip Lindsay, who not only goes out there and puts up a top 12 fantasy season despite missing 2 weeks, but gives you 60% good games, 13% great. As a rookie, established himself through the first half of the season, and all of a sudden was this consistent weapon who week 11, 25 fantasy points, week 12, 17, week 13, 28, was getting into the end zone. 9 touchdowns, guys, on the ground. Over 1,000 yards as a rookie.
Yeah, the tale of Phillip Lindsay for me is, one, how incredible the emergence of him, because the attention in the process towards Royce Freeman, yeah, I took the L for loving Royce Freeman, but the process of Denver running back, I think it kind of played out. And you bet against Phillip Lindsay because undrafted free agents don't do what he did. He's an absolute complete outlier. But towards the end of the season, things really – they trailed off big time in the past 2 weeks, or in weeks 15 and 16. Do you think at all was this just a matter of circumstance, ran into tough matchups, or did Phillip Lindsay actually wear down because he is not prototypically sized for a running back?
He's a smaller back. That's why, smaller back from a smaller school, which is why he wasn't invited to the combine.
Right.
He did slow down a little bit. I mean, those last 3 games, 2 yards a carry, 1.7 yards. It wasn't good. But a lot of times, people around NFL circles, they always bring up the rookie wall, that it's a real thing. And I'm not worried about him not being able to handle the load. You look at guys like Darren Sproles who are small, and you watch him, and whenever it comes time to get that tackle, he squirts under for another extra yard or two and avoids some damage. Look, the coaching staff is changing, right? Vic Fangio
That's a big problem.
is coming in, and
it's
usually
a problem for him.
In
my mind, I look at it the opposite. This is a team that's going to win with Bradley Chubb and Von Miller. This is a defensive-oriented team.
Right, but
they're going to run the football with a couple of guys.
No. And Mike Munchak is there, one of the best offensive line coaches in the entire game. I'm saying the problem is, let's see where his ADP ends up, because I imagine it's going to be relatively high, but the new coaching staff has no loyalty to Phillip Lindsay, who was great.
But they may want a prototypical guy like Royce Freeman.
They may want Royce Freeman. They may want an even higher a timeshare. That's my only thing, is Phillip Lindsay is going to have.
So the variable of a changing coaching staff.
Exactly.
And I was going to bring exactly that narrative up and say that I don't think that's going to happen.
Okay.
Because Phillip Lindsay already dealt with this. He wasn't the highly drafted guy on that previous coaching staff, but what happened was he was the best running back by a mile. He was great. He was great in training camp.
5.4 yards per carry.
Came out week 1 and had 15 carries. This was something that all the people that did not invest heavily in Phillip Lindsay, they saw what then we got to see through the season.
Right.
He is a great running back. His pro day, he was like 4.33 speed. He is really good, and I think with this defensive-minded coach, the consistency that you saw from Phillip Lindsay this year, the truth the truth on Phillip Lindsay is
he's good.
He's really good, and I will put stock in him next year.
Now, he did suffer a wrist injury at the end of the season that's going to require 3 to 4 months to recover from, ligament damage. This is an injury that could lead all the way into training camp and beyond, so that's something to monitor as well. And obviously, whenever you don't have a heavy financial commitment, no matter how good you performed the year before, we talked about this with Alex Collins last year, there's variables there. But we're in that variable tier, and at least he showed us explosive things on the field.
Yep.
Tarik Cohen comes in at number 13. Wow. Tarik Cohen.
But consistency rank of 20.
Yeah, he was
You kind of felt it.
71 receptions, 725 yards through the air, 5 touchdowns, 91 targets, only 99 carries on the ground. He is a pass-catching weapon.
Yeah.
31% of the time he busted for you, 63% of the time good games, 13% great. You benefited from a head coach who knew how to use weapons better than the previous head coach. But this is kind of, we talked about James White, who came in at number 8 on the Tuesday show. Tarik Cohen, there are going to be games in which a player that is this heavily dependent on pass catching is simply not factored in, right? I mean, that's the problem.
Yeah, and the purpose of this episode is to look at the truth of where they finished and do they deserve that kind of credit. And I would say overwhelmingly no for Tarik Cohen. Could he be awesome and finish there again next year? Absolutely. But his consistency, busting over 30% of the games, part of that was game script. There were certain games that Matt Nagy just said that this isn't what you thought it was going to be. We saw something on that defense, kind of what Matt Nagy said before the season would happen, that he's going to use Howard, he's going to use Cohen, how the opponent, how he sees fit for the matchup. And I think that gives me pause to rely on Tarik Cohen as my running back 2, which is probably where you'll need to draft him as a 2. Maybe you could get him as a 3, but I don't want him as my 2, because if you rely on him on a week in, week out basis, he'll win you a couple games, he'll lose you a couple games. I want consistency outside of my number one running back.
I am actually very interested in Cohen, and I get the bust at 31%. Personally, I'm throwing those first 2 weeks into the garbage, because that's when Jordan Howard was getting the 5 receptions a game.
They were testing the waters.
It did not take very long for the team to say, yeah, this is not how we're going to run our offense. And then you saw the hockey stick curve of fantasy dominance for Tarik Cohen weeks 4 through 13. He was the running back 12. He was averaging over 16 points a game. Yes, you're going to have week 9 show up, or like in the playoffs where there was the game where Tarik Cohen got 4 total touches. I mean, some things that just are going to make you rip your hair out. But I think overall Tarik Cohen is going to be safe to be a top. I'm not going to say not safe for top 15, but I think he's a safe top 20 running back.
Let me ask you this, because let's put some of these guys on the table. If you're looking right now, right here, reserve the right to change your mind. But James White, Phillip Lindsay, and Tarik Cohen, three interesting names, right?
Right.
Lindsay, not a long track record. Cohen and White, both very pass-catching dependent. How would you rank them, just those 3 going into next year?
Lindsay would be my first by a mile, assuming health towards the beginning of the season. And then I think I would go Cohen over White, just based on what we saw happen to White when the entire Patriots crew was healthy.
Yeah, I think he
disappeared.
That's how I do it as well. Jay, how are you feeling on his teammates? So just Tarik Cohen versus Jordan Howard.
I look, they both are utilized a lot, and I don't think that's going to change unless the change that could happen is going to be for the worse. In the sense that if something changes, it's going to be because they bring in a new back. They sign a Kareem Hunt for when he's out of his suspension, or they draft someone high. I think they'll try to replace Jordan Howard before they replace Tarik Cohen. But in the meantime, Jordan Howard's volume is still there. He's still secure. He's, a 250-plus rush attempt type of guy.
He's heading into the last year of his rookie deal, by the way, Jordan Howard.
Sure. And I mean, I think both are.
The Bears are one of the many teams that Mark Ingram will sign with this offseason. He's going to be signing with upwards of 10 non-New Orleans teams this offseason.
All right.
He'll be a Saint.
Well,
Yes.
he may be a good person, but he ain't going to play in New
Dorothy
Orleans.
Mantooth was a saint.
There's Mike's throwing. Hey, let's talk about Derrick Henry because I'm excited to actually see the numbers behind what we already know. Look, Derrick Henry, what can you say about a 47.5-point week in Week 14 followed by heavy carry totals and big performances, 29, 15 points in Weeks 15 and 16. The miraculous, unforeseen savior of many fantasy teams. Number 4, here is the illustration. Number 14, final finish. Number 32, consistency rank. If you have to have me weigh him between those two, I probably end up somewhere in the middle in terms of where he'd be ranked on my early 2019 rankings. But here's the story for Derrick Henry last year at least. 50% of his games were busts. Okay, that's outside the top 50.
That's a complete trashed your team.
Derrick Henry. It's a Derrick Henry, generally, is what it's been known as.
Half of his games, he trashed your team. That's why he was on waivers.
And 50% of his games were considered good and 13% great. 48% of his fantasy points came in weeks 14 through 16. He didn't even surpass 65 total yards until week 14. And one of the reasons I swung and missed on a regression in week 15 is because that week 14 monster performance was the first time he had surpassed 65 rushing yards in like all of last year and this year combined. It doesn't really make sense that a player can do something. Look, I said players change. It's not normally overnight. It's not normally from one game to the other. And then there's variables of, who's in the backfield with him next year. Is Marcus Mariota healthy? You no longer have Matt LaFleur, right? You got a very limited stint, and you don't even know what you had in Matt LaFleur. There was nothing impressive about that offense last year. So where do you fall with Derrick Henry? Because here's what you know. If they give him 20 carries, you're going to be fine, no matter how inefficient he is.
Yeah, right. That's the thing. When he had his big breakout week, I couldn't wait for this episode to talk about Derrick Henry, to talk about how don't buy into his end-of-season rankings.
But then it kept going.
And what matters to Derrick Henry is volume. He's a volume back. He's one of those wear-you-down, big-body backs. He's not going to ever be valuable for fantasy when listen to these carry counts through the middle of the year. 8 carries, 11, 7, 12, 6, 11, 9, 8, 10. You can't do a Derrick Henry for fantasy. That can't work. That cannot
Derrick
work.
Henry for the NFL, that can't work.
Yeah, true. But the Titans figured something out after his breakout game, and they didn't go away from him, ever. And his carry counts on the season, he had 215 carries on the season. But over that stretch from that breakout game on, they were giving him carries that were a 16-game pace of 350 carries. So, look, if he can be
and maybe that's what he is. Maybe he needs it.
He does.
Like Deion Lewis disrupted his ability to do anything because they paid Deion too much money, which meant they had to give him too many carries.
If I knew that Derrick Henry gets 300 carries, and, I don't know what he does with them. I don't know if he stinks, he's inefficient, if he doesn't get touchdown opportunities, but I know he's getting 300 carries on a season. I will draft him very high.
You're going to sign up.
I will sign up.
And 305 was like the lead of this past season.
Because 300 is a lot of carries.
I would not be surprised if Derrick Henry was in that category next year.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. After
him and
what
Mark
happened,
Ingram will have to compete for carries in that backfield.
They got to the play. Oh, goodness.
This is not going away, guys.
Oh, it better. Look, Mark Ingram needs to re-sign with the Saints immediately so this can go away.
We'll move on. Chris Carson at number 15. Consistency rank of 14. That's exactly how he felt. He felt like the 15th best running back each and every week. He was out there kind of giving you a reliable perspective. Like you felt like he was the number one guy in Seattle. Now, you didn't know when or if Rashad Penny was going to take the mantle from him. But the eye test, the fact that in 71% of his games, fantasy-wise, he gave you a good 10-plus point performance, best yards after contact percentage of running backs over 200 attempts. I feel like he was for Seattle what he was for fantasy owners.
Yes.
Which was just solid, right?
Yep.
A solid running back.
Yeah.
I want him as my 2. Like that would be outstanding.
Yeah, the truth even if you look at, okay, he was the 15th ranked running back by our Truth consistency score. One of the things that doesn't
he was 15th. He was consistency ranked 14.
14. One of the things that doesn't consider is the games that he got injured and left. And so some of his bad games were that. Now, his running style says, like, I really want to get hurt. I mean, he goes hard in the paint. Every single play, it looks like he's kamikaze. And but man, you're on a team that can run the ball, that wants to run the ball and did so at a rate higher than most teams in the league. And I don't think he's going to cede that first spot. He felt very consistent so long as he wasn't injured. And since you can't really predict injuries, I think you have to lean with him being a consistent back.
Now, he has what I'll call the Alex Collins effect going for him to a degree as well. They invested a first-round draft pick in Rashad Penny. Rashad Penny was banged up for a large portion of the year, and he will bring pause to any potential Chris Carson drafter. And if he's drafted anywhere inside the top 20, that might be too much risk for me.
The top 20 at the position?
At the position. Like, okay. If Chris Carson falls in my draft,
I bet Chris Carson,
to where he's outside that range, he's going to
go
value to me.
He's going to go in those in that fourth round.
I'll probably choose
maelstrom.
I'll choose somebody
backs.
else. I'll choose somebody else.
Mike Davis is a unrestricted free agent. I expect him to depart and try to get money somewhere else. That'll help with maybe Rashad Penny gets more carries because there's so much. There's so many.
There is a lot to go around there.
Rushing attempts there that I think both Penny and Carson could have successful seasons next season.
Well, yeah, and maybe that problem, perceived problem, isn't a problem, and maybe that makes him a value.
Yeah.
Where would you draft Rashad Penny, hypothetically? Because if Chris Carson shows you what he can do in that system, the investment on Rashad Penny, how far is that gap between them? And do you want, much like Henry and Lewis, where you had to choose between best value, best player, are you undoubtedly taking Carson?
Yeah, right now Penny
or
is,
you don't wait for
Penny's
Penny?
like 9th, 10th round for me.
Yeah, I love Penny. I think he's hyper talented. I hope he wins that job at some point, but it's definitely Chris Carson right now.
I'm going to be wanting to see where Penny tips the scales in training camp.
Yeah.
That don't matter to me. Nick Chubb, number 16 by total points, which you can almost throw out the window because of the fact he started the year with 2, 1, and 0. Did we count those in his consistency? Okay. So if you take out the games that he was behind Carlos Hyde and got like a handful of carries.
And which means we also took out one of his big games where he had the 200
yards on 3 touches or whatever.
200 yards on 3 touches. Because we wanted, when we're doing this, these are proprietary metrics that we're grinding on and wanting to make sure they're
wanted to make sense.
Yeah, wanted to be predictive for the future and telling of the past. And
he had 16 total rushes in weeks 1 through 6. So are those the ones we pulled out?
Exactly. 1 through 6, we just said he was. That's not who he was. Once he got the start in week 7, we went from the rest of the season, and that's why he is a top 10 in our consistency score.
Number 9. So number 16 finish, number 9 in consistency. You need to look at him much more in the 8-9 range at the running back position than you do the 16 going into next year. In those games that we ranked him, only 10%, which is one game, did he qualify as a bust. The rest, 80% good, 20% great. There are only a handful of players in the NFL.
That was week 17.
Right, and there are only a handful of players in the NFL they have the potential of a 60, 70, 80-yard run. Nick Chubb was in that category this year.
The big red flag for Nick Chubb is his defensive splits because he beat the crap out of bad teams. 7 games against bottom 16, averaged over 17 points a game. His 9 games against top 16 rushing defenses, 7.2, which is just above our threshold of.
The only problem with those metrics is those do not take into account those first few weeks. So some of the matchups he had, New Orleans Saints, for instance, are a top
That's
defense.
fair.
He did nothing against them because he literally had, it looks like he had 3 snaps that game.
That's fair.
But he's one of the brightest young fantasy / NFL football stars in the game. I mean, he has an opportunity on an offense that took huge strides forward with a consistent with a consistent quarterback and a real commitment to him as a workhorse type back, and he's built to be that. That's what I love about Nick Chubb. I mean, Nick Chubb proved enough this year to have me put him in the category that I would have put Joe Mixon in coming into this season.
Yeah, and I love that Freddie Kitchens is back. Like that's humongous for Nick Chubb.
And for projecting any Cleveland Brown
offensive
just
any of the offense, but I'm saying specifically to Nick Chubb, Freddie Kitchens was part of the staff that said, Nick Chubb, carry us there. So he's back. He's calling the shots. I'm very excited for Nick Chubb.
I love Nick Chubb. He's going to be one of those guys where when you're making your top 10 running backs, there might be too many people that you're like, man, they all deserve to be in the top 10 because Chubb does belong in that top 10 conversation, especially, I didn't think he was going to be used in the receiving game hardly at all. He projected from
Duke Johnson didn't think he would either.
Yeah,
as a starter,
he was real disappointed
in those games.
20 receptions in his time,
so
over the course of the season. So
as a starter, projected for 32 receptions. Not great. We would be complaining if that was Zeke. Saying, man, I want him to get up.
I don't think it's going to go
mark.
much higher than that either. I don't think there's any.
If you can give me Nick Chubb's carry count though, and get him to that 40 reception territory, I mean, then you're talking. Dare I bring up the name, but that's like that Eddie Lacy category of work. I'm still very interested.
He was Pro Football Focus's highest elusive rating for players with 60-plus attempts, so he didn't just perform for fantasy. He was legitimately a quality running back. What's funny to me, and I've brought this up already, but I'm a big Sony Michel fan for 2019. I just have a real conviction that Sony Michel, you saw it in the first playoff game, his ability. I just think it's funny. Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, Georgia running backs, both emerging. I think they're going to be in similar discussions of tier and where they're drafted next year or deserve to be.
Who do you think you'd take out of those two?
I think I would take Nick Chubb because of
well.
the variables that exist that we talked about before the season with who's playing running back in New England. That could get clearer over the course of the season, but that's where I'd lean right now. All right, number 17, Kenyan Drake. Consistency rank of 28. Adam Gaze's least favorite player outside of,
Devontae Parker.
Jay Ajayi.
All of his
Jarvis Landry.
Right. Any of his players that are good.
Yeah, he's not a big fan of that. Well, he sacrificed statistics to win games.
I like that you're calling Devontae Parker good.
He's better than what he's shown.
I think he had a chance to be good until he was just in doghouse and you don't get to play football.
Yeah. So over the course of the season, Kenyan Drake, the anomaly himself, 120 for 535 and 4 on the ground. There's nothing impressive about that. 53 for 477 and 5 through the air. Now we're getting somewhere. But not enough of the workload, not enough consistency in terms of the carry counts, reception totals. His occasional good game towards the end of the season came on, one of his targets ended up as a touchdown. One of his was a walk-off.
He had that fluke play against the Patriots.
7 games underneath.
55! Whoa!
7 games under 55 total yards. So not even just on the ground, just everything he had an opportunity to do. 7 games under 55, scored a total of 1 touchdown in those 7 games. He left you with the, going back in time here, the bitter beer face more often than not when you put him in your lineup.
Yeah, he was not consistent.
He's no Damien Williams, is what I'm saying, Jason.
He was not a great fantasy asset at all this year, and usually you got it wrong. On the weeks where he did explode, he was probably on your bench, and the weeks where you thought you could put him in, he disappointed you, and part of that's going to be Adam Gase. Part of that was Frank Gore. And honestly, with Adam Gase leaving, Frank Gore says he wants to come back. We'll have to see. But I don't think
Don't forget the Bellagio.
Oh, Kalen Ballage.
High roller.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about the Bellagio. I think that the Bellagio
is good, man.
and Kenyan Drake can both coexist. But,
I would not be surprised if that's who coexists there. I don't know if anybody but Adam Gase wants to bring Frank Gore back for another three-headed monster, but we'll see.
This will be interesting to see what does the coaching staff finalize in Miami.
Right. And
maybe it's final by the time you're hearing this recording. We don't have it.
They have enough holes to fill right now. I mean, a lot of drafts have them picking a quarterback and
I don't think you want to bring up holes around that coaching staff.
Well, they lost one.
They did lose one.
So they got to replace. They've got to replace.
How do you lose a hole?
They got to replace some holes on their lineup. But my point is, I don't think that they have the room to spend draft capital.
That's a puzzle.
How do you lose a hole?
Yeah.
Can't find a hole? Let's just stop.
Yeah. Moving along.
Moving along.
I just don't think they can put draft capital on a running back. So I think you're right. It could very well be Drake and Ballage next season. But I'm going to pretty much stay away.
Could also be Ballage and Drake.
Oh,
Stop
that's a
it.
solid point. That's the way I'd lean, by the way. Number 18, Adrian Peterson. He was the 18th best running back in
Good
football.
for you, Peterson.
Firmly in the running back 2 finish, and then a consistency rank of 31. 16 games played, 251 yards, over 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns on the ground. And, I mean, you just kind of tip your cap to a guy who not a great offensive situation. Alex Smith didn't work out.
That was a tough – well, Alex Smith didn't
That's
work.
not what I meant. You know what I mean? The offense was not impressive even with
That's
him.
rough.
Well, it wasn't impressive.
Sure, but he was –
But they were winning games early.
and he was actually solid. I mean, in those first 8 weeks, 3 games over the 20-point threshold for Adrian Peterson. It got
And
it was up
games
against
under 10 points.
It was up against Adrian Peterson with the offensive line injuries, with your franchise quarterback going down, your backup quarterback going down. So I'll be very interested to see.
He will come back and play football next year.
You think so? You feel strongly about it?
Where?
For
For the Saints, they're going to lose Mark
Yeah.
Ingram.
for Washington. It will be Geis, Peterson, Chris Thompson next year.
Have you guys seen the Geis tapes coming out lately? Him working out, he's going
to be great.
He's looking really good.
He's going to be great.
They still need insurance for him.
Sure.
Adrian Peterson will be back, in my opinion, with the Washington Redskins. Part of why I have confidence in that is the fact that Jay Gruden is back as the head coach once again, and what Adrian Peterson provided for them at a position in which Jay Gruden has never had anybody stay healthy for more than 5 minutes. You need an insurance policy for Darius Geis and a mentor for him, and that is what Adrian Peterson can provide. Maybe he lands somewhere else. I think Peterson said he wants to play another 13 years.
But would you want it? I mean,
if I were them,
let's just look at this last year, right? The truth of Adrian Peterson. He finished as the number 18 running back. But if you had Adrian Peterson and were starting him, you probably didn't even make the playoffs. He was there were so many games where he was complete and utter trash. I feel like he was very boom-bust this season. I don't think people were happy with the number 18 running back this year. That sounds pretty good, especially because you drafted him late.
That might have been why you were happy, though.
Yeah, I'm saying even with that, I think people that owned Adrian Peterson did not do well in fantasy this year.
I don't share that opinion with you. I think you're a lot happier with Adrian Peterson drafted late doing what he did than Derrick Henry drafted early and doing what he did.
Yeah, you got Peterson very late.
But I don't think he doesn't have a clear path to this again. I mean, there's just no clear path to him doing this again outside
the clear path is you sit around
depth chart assassin.
You don't sign with anybody, and then someone gets hit with a devastating injury, and you go clean up the pieces.
All right. Let's look at and props to him, 4.15 a carry in his age 72 season. Tevin Coleman comes in at number 19. More question marks. I mean, these names, as they pop up and you get a chance to dive in, I can just see what our offseason is going to be made of. And Tevin Coleman, number 19 on the season.
This was really
21 by consistency in a disappointment to all.
It was very, very disappointing because Tevin Coleman, the allure of the early draft pick of Tevin Coleman was maybe he gets an opportunity because Devonta Freeman goes down. Freeman went down
pretty early.
Very early on in the season, early enough that weeks 11 through 13, you should not be seeing a carry total of 24 carries in that time period. They clearly there was just never enough shown by Tevin Coleman to the Falcons that they're gonna ride him out, and especially to me, and this is just going down a narrative of this is how I would be coaching the team. But you know that Tevin Coleman's not coming back to the team. I would rather wear him out trying to get my team into the playoffs than try and get Ito Smith involved.
Unless you
next
legitimately don't think he's the key to getting you to the playoffs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was extremely troubling. When
Only 167 carries on a year where we figured the path was open.
Big time.
Which makes you wonder about, I don't want to disparage him in speculation, but everything that took place from a workload perspective, it made you question, was there problems on the practice field? Why did they have more confidence in Ito Smith? Why weren't they giving him more of a workload? I don't know the answer to those questions, and I don't know where he's going to land, but all of the excitement, and he's going to be out there looking for $20, $30 million guaranteed. I mean,
he will.
That's what he's going to be out there looking for, and he's not going to end up back in Atlanta. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to. I mean, maybe his poor performance will make it to where they can afford him, and he'll be back, but the expectation has been for a while that because they paid Devontae Freeman, that Tevin Coleman would not be able to return.
Does he get a deal as good as Jerick McKinnon? Because that's where I think it's possible that he gets a deal in that range because of his age, explosive nature. He trailed only Saquon Barkley in breakaway rate among running backs with 150-plus attempts, so he's always done the big play thing. You wonder if there's a team that latches on to that as the untapped potential of Tevin Coleman, because think about how we treat fantasy. We go, oh, man, we've seen a little bit of it from them. Let's go buy low. Do you think there's a team out there that goes, wow, 800 yards, didn't get enough carries, explosive player, young?
It could happen. I mean, that was what we thought was in Dynasty going into this previous season. People thought, oh, Tevin Coleman's going to be a star in 2019,
right?
Because he's going to go sign somewhere a la Jerick McKinnon and be the guy. And I think GMs this year have to give pause to give him big money based on the opportunity laid in front of him and his performance this season. I think he played himself out of that happening.
That'll be very interesting to see who takes a chance on him. You've got a different group of running backs. Last year was McKinnon, Isaiah Crowell, where they're going to end up. This year you got Ingram. Does he come back? Does he not? Coleman moving on potentially. Jordan Howard. Interesting season for Jordan Howard. Number 20.
So weird.
Number 20 on the list. 21st by consistency. Strong, stable finish to the year. I won't say abnormally strong. He only had one game in this year that qualified in our great category by consistency. He busted in a quarter of his games. And then 56% in that good category. However, much like Adrian Peterson, in my opinion, you kind of didn't know when you could play him and when you couldn't. Never did we never had a real smile on our face up until maybe the last couple weeks of the season when you put him into your lineup.
The very end of the season was, aside from the beginning, where he was catching, like I said, 4 to 5 passes a week, and the first 3 weeks of the season you thought you had something special in Jordan Howard. So you kept forcing him in. Then weeks 4 and week 6, he was awful for your team. Then you could have played him, but you probably didn't. Until you finally had those confidence. All right, Jordan Howard, you're going back in weeks 10 through 12, and he torched you again.
I think what we know is that Jordan Howard is what he is, right? He's not going to be a pass-catching weapon.
No.
He's going to be a Adrian Peterson type performer fantasy-wise this past year on your team. Like, do you rank him above or below 18 going into next season? Just off the top of your head.
That's a great threshold.
Yeah, it is. I would probably rank him just below that threshold.
Yeah, I would as well.
Probably what I would do too, just because, there are games he's going to disappear. He did have 9 touchdowns, 250 for 935 and 9. Do you think 9 is about where he belongs? Or
yeah.
is that
that 7 to 9 range is fine
7
by
to 9.
me.
Marlon Mack at 21, consistency rank of 18. His season was difficult because he missed the majority of the first 5 games. Also missed week 9, had some monster games in there. 25% of his games that he played, 25% were great. That's the highest percentage from our finishers from number 11 all the way to now 21. So you got some boom games, some week-winning games from Marlon Mack.
The offensive line in Indianapolis.
That's honestly everything for me.
It changed
so drastically. You got a picture of it up on the wall in your house? I mean, it was pretty.
I got him in a locket.
2017, it was one of the biggest problems for the Colts, along with the fact that, Andrew Luck was missing. You get both of those rectified, and that starting running back who is a good – he can make guys miss. He's got some juice. And
he torched difficult defenses.
Yeah, it was a lot of times. I remember there was the game where it was like, man,
Dallas.
Yeah, Dallas has just been so good, and he destroyed them. So, yeah, I think Marlon Mack, assuming they don't do anything drastic in free agency, and I don't think they do, considering they've got two rookies.
Yeah, they got Jordan Wilkins, Nyheim Hines.
Right, so
firmly behind Mack, in my opinion, too.
Yeah, so Marlon Mack, he's probably going to be too high in my rankings.
He's going to be high.
He's going to be near I see him as an RB1 if they don't change things.
Whoa, that's hot. So you take him over Jordan Howard.
I would definitely take him over Jordan Howard.
High-powered offense, great quarterback, great offensive line.
Mack or Chubb?
Chubb.
Okay. Mack has that sweet.
That's close.
Sweet
That's
pass catching capability.
Off the top of my head, that's very close.
But I doubt they end up very different on the year.
Yeah, the big
Mack
difference
with 5 or 6 more receptions
is that I do still have worries that Chubb could have those games where he's kind of game scripted out.
Right.
Like we kind of saw that in Week 17 against Baltimore when they were throwing a lot, and Chubb had a very low snap percentage.
All right, I want to highlight some more names just at an overview level since we broke down all the data, the truth, the consistency of these players, where they finished and then where they were consistent. I want to give a shout-out to Lamar Miller, who this year, despite finishing at 22, was the 15th most consistent player, also made his first Pro Bowl.
He was
Lamar
very
Miller.
good. He was very good.
Yeah, he was weird, man.
Yes, he was.
No player looked worse and better at different times of the year.
I think you said it well, Jason. He was very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, he fits in that category.
It's good.
Aaron Jones, 23 and 23. Again, competing, injured, dealing with some different things. What do you think about Aaron Jones next year?
So
much potential.
Yes, so much potential. This is the same argument for Phillip Lindsay, that if you're watching them play, at least from our perspective, we can't see any of the practices, any of the behind-the-scenes stuff. He's the best running back on the team. But why did it take so long for Aaron Jones to become the guy for the Green Bay Packers? And now you have a new coaching staff. So that's the variables on him when I think that he will be drafted very high. He's going to be riding shotgun in that hype train this offseason.
It actually matters a ton to me how that season begins depth chart-wise. I mean, it's like this new coaching staff has to form their opinion on these guys through all of training camp, preseason, and practicing. I mean, if Jamal Williams runs out there week 1, that's just sound the alarms. That'll be one of those things. Remember a couple of years ago, Burkhead or
oh, yeah.
Who was it in the beginning of the season? It was Burkhead or –
Oh, I've got it. Why can't I think of
Blunt?
his name?
No,
it was the guy who went to the Saints.
Oh, Gillislee.
Yeah.
Where you were looking for that first snap. That'll be interesting. Austin Ekeler at 24, consistency rate of 30.
There's one guy we absolutely have to talk about. I know we're getting near the end, but you guys need to talk me off the ledge because as a Dalvin Cook owner.
Sure. 31, by the way.
He destroyed me. And he destroyed anybody that drafted him because the first half of the year he was pretty much injured. But he came back for a couple games where he sucked. And he'd give you 2 points or he'd give you half a point. He would destroy your team. But in the games he played, including the half-a-point game, including the 2-point game,
Dalvin Cook has a great future ahead of him.
He was great. He was our number 13 in consistency ranking because at the end of the year, 15, 14, 16, 28, 12.
Look at weeks 12 through the end of the season. And then realize that they made an offensive coordinator switch right around that time when they said, we got to stop being so pass-heavy. We got to get it to the running back. I mean, it all was correlated with the returning health of Dalvin Cook. I think I completely agree with Andy. His future is extremely bright for the NFL and for fantasy.
And he catches the ball. I mean, in limited work this year, 11 games, 40 receptions. That's a lot. That's a 60-something reception season.
Latavius Murray is an unrestricted free agent as well.
All right. You want the devil you know or the devil you don't know there?
I'll probably hop back in the kitchen and grab
Cook. When Mark Ingram signs with Minnesota behind Dalvin Cook, here's the thing. They do have to bring in a notable addition in the Latavius Murray category, like Adrian Peterson. They have to bring in somebody because Dalvin Cook, over multiple years, has proven himself to be injury prone's the wrong label, but prone to injury.
Often injured. How do you feel, Andy? Because you're very bullish on Sony Michel. He finished the season on 28. Consistency, though, he ranked 41. That was this year. 54% of the time he busted, and that includes the final stretch of the season where things were kind of in place for the team.
Sure, and I think part of my motivation or part of my argument,
only 7 receptions for Sony Michel.
No doubt. Yeah, one of the reasons I like
doo-doo.
Sony Michel is in the context of who's going to be underdrafted versus overdrafted. I think Sony Michel, because of all the different variables that were in place this year, Burkhead and White, and injury to begin the year, injury in the middle of the year, Rob Gronkowski's disappearance, all of these different things. I think what you saw in Week 16, what you saw in the divisional game is more indicative of the future and their desire to use Sony Michel in that way. And so because of that, I believe that there's a value there. That doesn't make him a top 5 guy, a top 10 guy necessarily. But I just think he's going to be underdrafted because you're going to look at those metrics and you're going to look at him and you're going to say, boy, it was spotty. It was real spotty. And I think the player himself, he's a guy that can get the majority of the work.
Sure.
And as Tom Brady becomes more and more,
Tom Fady.
Ooh. Thank you for filling in that blank.
I'll allow it.
And then, I just think there's an opportunity, and we'll see how the season progresses. Offseason. Last guy to talk about, Leonard Fournette, came in at number 40. We knew his season was a mess.
A mystery.
Consistency rank at 25, though.
Just imagine if you started the season with Dalvin Cook, Leonard Fournette, and David Johnson. What a beast team.
Is that? Do you know somebody like?
That's his team.
That was my monster team.
I know. Here's the thing. Leonard Fournette could be a value as well.
Here's the thing.
He also dominated top 16 defenses, 16.58 points per game in the games against them. So he stepped up to big competition.
Yes, and the latest we have heard, the whispers from the bushes, that Leonard Fournette and Tom Coughlin and co. have cleared the air after the fiasco at the end of the season where he had the suspension, and then because of the suspension and his behavior, sit up straight, young man.
Oh, stop.
No, it's
not. Don't say it's ridiculous.
It is.
What's ridiculous?
That when Leonard Fournette is on the bench, that you're going to hold it. You're going to use that in partnership with his 1-game suspension to remove his guaranteed money.
You're going to use all the information they have in partnership to have an expectation for your player that you want. And he made do you disagree that he made a boneheaded move in his suspension?
His suspension was highly egregious.
So it's just I'm glad they cleared the air. He's a talent. I want to see him succeed.
He's not going to.
For Leonard Fournette's
here's the thing.
sake,
There's some talk about Nick Foles going to Jacksonville. I think that's a high probability landing spot for Nick Foles.
It'd be good.
Could be some opportunity there for a team that only needs 1 or 2 pieces.
Yeah, I look, there's been questions about is Leonard Fournette putting in all the effort? Is he coming to camp looking right? Say what you want. I'm sad for him as a man that he lost his guaranteed money from his contract. He's guaranteed nothing. They could cut him for nothing. But that's a huge motivator if you want him to show up in shape, ready to go.
Him being in shape, that matters a ton. He's somebody that has not taken that as serious as he should coming into the to the NFL. And he's a different player, 10 pounds lighter than he is at his high playing weight. So, that about wraps it up for the truth of the fantasy running back position.
Pristine deal of the day.
All right, yesterday on pristineauction.com, your home for sports memorabilia, a Tarik Cohen signed Bears mini helmet. $85.
Oh!
Big Bears fans.
Yeah, I
Pick
like
that up.
I like Tarik Cohen so much.
200, 300, hundreds of daily auctions every single day. Autographed sports memorabilia, your favorite teams, every sport. Check it out, pristineauction.com. You guys got anything else you want to throw in there, Mr. Sack of Potatoes?
Oh, that hurts feelings.
But you can eat the potatoes and eat away the
you
feelings.
love potatoes.
On Pizza the Hut? All right.
See you
All
for
right.
playing.
See you next time. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.